Mama Gana Timirandasya Ganandana Salakaya Chakshulan Militam Jaina Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jaina Bhutale Swaya Rupa Kadamayam Tatati Sva Patandikam Vanchakopa Tarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasri Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. It was very wonderful to be here today. I first came here, actually it was 50 years ago, October, when I first came to India, 1972. I first came to Mumbai, at that time Bombay, and stayed at Kartikeya Mahadeva's house with Srila Prabhupada for some weeks. So that was my first time here. Before any of this, I was with Prabhupada in 1972, all of 1973, 1974, 1975. And when I traveled with him in India, all of this was just Prabhupada's desires that he had inside. I read a letter Prabhupada wrote, 1977, late in 1977, maybe May, June. Srila Prabhupada said when he left India, he never wanted to come back. He said he was disgusted by India. When he came back, because it was Sri Sri Rukmini Dwarkadish in New Dwarka, Los Angeles, in the USA. 1973, that was world headquarters. And Srila Prabhupada would stay there for months and months, developing his society, training his disciples. Temples are opening up all over the world. That was his world headquarters. And the deity worship there was summit. Prabhupada uses a word regarding deity worship. He says the standard of deity worship should be summit cleanliness. Everyone know what summit means? Just like you have the Himalayas. When you get to the top, the tippy top, that climb up. If anyone's gone to the Himalayas, you see many, many mountains. Actually, it comes to very pointy spots. Sometimes there's trails on. That's the summit. So summit means topmost. So here, everywhere, here in Juhu, as we know, and tomorrow we'll talk more and more about Prabhupada's involvement here in Juhu. Maybe it will happen today, I don't know. I was going to talk about that demoniac person more tomorrow. A 4-letter word, is it? And yes, actually it was a 4-letter word, Nair. So Prabhupada had such grand plans for this place. This place none of his disciples could understand. Back in 1970, 71, 72. This place was a fishing village, Juhu. They just have fishing boats, and there were fishermen here. But Prabhupada acquired this land, and he had wonderful plans for Juhu. Myself included, as again in 1972 in December, I stayed at Kartikeya Mahadeva's place with Srila Prabhupada. He was up on the second floor. Was it Sea Parks, Ocean Sea Park, something in Mumbai, right by the sea. So Mr. Mahadeva, he gave Prabhupada the entire flat. I don't know where. He had 2 children. Kartikeya, his wife, 2 little children. Daughter was about 16, son was like 10 years old. So we just took over their place. Srila Prabhupada was amazing. I went to that place a few years ago, the Mahadeva's place, just to see where I initially stayed here in Mumbai. Prabhupada came in October 15th. He went to Vrindaban, 1972. It was the first time Prabhupada was in Vrindaban in his rooms at Radha Damodar Temple since he had left in 1965. And he was very excited to be in Vrindaban for Kartik. But even at that time, he was getting letters about what was going on here in Juhu with this property. We all sit here so comfortably now, huh? Everything is here. I see, Prabhupada made this place special. We know Prabhupada had, in India, he marked Vrindaban is my home. I've been very fortunate. Back just before the lockdown, my wife and I, we went to Vrindaban with the intention of living there. You can call it for me a retirement. No such thing. We follow Prabhupada's. Prabhupada said he had a curse. Couldn't stay anywhere more than a few days, no matter how opulent his temples were. He said he carried the curse of Narada Muni. And he also said he gave it to his disciples. He gave it to his followers. Not to grow roots, become comfortable, complacent. He raised a whole generation, thousands of disciples as preachers. Everything else. You had Gaudiya Vaishnav philosophy. So many as Vaishnavas, it's different rules, regulations, Ekadasis, this program, that program. Prabhupada took them all and condensed them into one check mark. You're a preacher. And whatever you have to do that, you do it. That was Prabhupada's mood. I very often in Vrindaban, I'll be what they call the MC for the festivals, introducing my godbrothers, speak their remembrances, Prabhupada's appearance day, Prabhupada's disappearance day. And there'll be 100 of them. And you have 2 hours, everyone's supposed to speak, 100 devotees in 2 hours, 3 hours. So it means a few minutes each. And every year after each person's up there 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and we try to ring bells, do anything. But Prabhupada created preachers. Once we start talking, very difficult to stop. Even myself. I don't have a lot to say, but you put me here, somehow or other, it clicks on. So when Prabhupada came here, of course I said Vrindaban is home. We got locked down in Vrindaban. Krishna Balaram's mercy. Even we had these silly tourist visas. 6 months you have to leave. We were there for 2 years. They kept extending, canceling because of the lockdown. We called it the coronavirus, not the coronavirus. At that time, years ago, right, it was corona. What was the corona? Corona, yes, the corona. In Mahadeva's house, there's a typewriter. Corona typewriter. Was Prabhupada's typewriter. I went to the house that day, and I was greeted at the door by the son. Now, he was 10 years old, 50 years ago. Now he's a 60-year-old man. As soon as I was standing at the door, and they didn't know we were coming, he said, Srutakirti. And then his mother came, Kartikeya's wife. He had died some years before. But when she came and we saw each other, and she just started crying, remembering those days, Srila Prabhupada stayed in her place. He had the nice master bedroom. Our servants, we were off in another room. Sanskrit editor, secretary. Of course, Tamal Krishna was around at that time, Gargamuni Maharaj. They would all come, of course, to see Prabhupada. Prabhupada had his plans, and I know he had his vision. We couldn't understand it. We were in the middle of nowhere. As I saw the deities this morning, I went to New Vrindaban in 1971. And again, I was traveling with Kirtanananda Maharaj back and forth, different places in the USA, universities, he's speaking. So I was traveling then. Radha Vrindaban Chandra are there. So they were my worshipable deities. But I actually didn't have a home. And then I started traveling with Prabhupada all over. Of course, in the USA, Los Angeles, there's deities. Dallas, Texas, there were deities. But I was just traveling with Prabhupada. He was my deity. We say pujari and personal servant. Same thing. That's why they say two most dangerous services, pujari and personal servant, because you can become familiar. As I traveled with Prabhupada, of course, with deities, I never had an opportunity to become familiar. Then Prabhupada came here. This was like New Dwarka, Los Angeles. Los Angeles, New Dwarka, right? Opulence. Here he came. What did he say? My office. Juhu is my office. You're also very fortunate. You're in a very special tirtha. Everywhere Prabhupada went is a tirtha. Everywhere he stepped, every morning walk, he made tirthas. Someday, one of you experts, you need to go and make the map, show everywhere, all the footsteps Prabhupada took as he purified this planet so that you could all join years later, generations later. I say so many times, all of you are here because somehow or other you connected with Srila Prabhupada previously. It's not that you just popped in here. Somehow or other you all got Srila Prabhupada's mercy. Maybe you were here in previous lives as he walked on the beach. Seagulls passing by, little sand crabs. Maybe he stepped on you. Who knows? Somehow we've all received the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. It's something you always have to be aware of. When I was a child with Prabhupada, 20 years old, I was servant. 21 years old, I became his servant. I was in the temple for just 16 months. That was a long time back then. If you were in the temple for 2-3 years, you were a senior devotee. And people were coming so quickly. So when I came here, when were the deities started to be worshipped here? What year? It was 73? Anyone remember? 72, I don't remember coming on the property. It was maybe late 72, early 1973. Yes. Oh, from 71. 72. From the Pondo, they were there in 1972. Srila Prabhupada so much wanted to give them a nice home. But somewhere on this property, there was this little concrete area they had formed to put Radharasa Bahari. Most opulent deities in the society. They started out in a shack with a tin roof over it. Prabhupada had a chair, was his Vyasasan. You see all the pictures, Prabhupada's Vyasasan. It was like a glorified chair. And we would do Guru Puja, started here. The very foundation of Guru Puja started here in Juhu. I remember those days. Srila Prabhupada sitting on the Vyasasan. I never did an aratik, Guru Puja aratik. I was his servant. I just sat there, stood there, handed people things, just like now someone's handing this thing, that thing. And somehow or other, I would even play the murdanga for Srila Prabhupada as he chanted Jaya Radha Madhava. I could keep a beat. I didn't know all the different mantras on the murdanga. He didn't care about that. Just do everything nicely and follow him as he's leading in every way, in his kirtan also. I remember one day sitting on the Vyasasan, Guru Puja's going on, and Prabhupada would play his cartels, and someone was there. He had the murdanga, but he was, what do they say, playing to the beat of a different drummer. So Prabhupada's playing one way, but he's banging on the drum, just not at all focused on what Prabhupada was doing. Because Prabhupada he would chant, and then of course he would get it going a little faster, little faster. So this devotee wasn't paying attention. And I'm sitting always looking at Srila Prabhupada. It was my service. Imagine having a service. Your eye is always 24 hours a day glued to your spiritual master, because that's your business. If you need something, you have to be there. So I'm just sitting there, kirtan's going on, and Prabhupada's playing, and he looks at this person playing the murdanga, who's not even looking at Prabhupada, much less following his lead. And Prabhupada's playing cartels, and he, without stopping anything, he looks at me and he goes, "Get the murdanga. This person's nonsense. He's doing whatever he wants. I'm trying to lead this kirtan." So he said, "Get the murdanga." Play the murdanga. So I had to get the murdanga. You know how difficult it was for me to go up to anyone and say, "Give me this." I was always this little person. I was surrounded by Prabhupada's generals all the time. Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Gargamuni, how many others? So many others. Hansaduda, all these big GBC men, Bhagavat, they were the people I was around. They were never my associates. I didn't have any. I had Prabhupada. He was my spiritual master. But those, neither could I talk to them even. They were 10 years older than me. Yeah. I was 21. They were 30. When Prabhupada came to America, 1965, it was virtually the very beginning of what they called the hippie movement. You know, the Beatles, they first came to the U.S. 1964 sometime. That's when all the hair started coming down. Intoxication, marijuana, LSD, everything was becoming very popular. And of course, free love. And those people, they're just teenagers, early 20s. They had a mantra. Their mantra was, "Don't trust anyone over 30. All my godbrothers were with Prabhupada. They were 30 or so. But in their 60s, all these people were surrendering to Srila Prabhupada. He was in his 70s. 30, 40, 50, 60. Don't trust anyone over 30. They're just trying to cheat you. It's a fact. In this material world, everyone is trying to cheat you. Well, Prabhupada says, politician means cheater. Don't let anyone tell you different. Politician means cheater. Never trust a politician. But here is Prabhupada. Of course, he was a Swami from India, you know. In those days, our idea of a Swami was, somebody sat on a magic carpet. He could zoom around on his carpet. We didn't know anything Eastern philosophy. We didn't have any understanding. When Prabhupada came here, he knew all of this was going to happen. In Mayapur, I used to see him stand on the veranda, and he would just look out, chanting. No one was on the veranda. He would look out over TOVP, right there where he was looking 50 years ago. Hold his head high. He said, I'm disgusted by India, 1977, because we're all getting sick all the time. The idea of me coming to India after the first trip, we were here for 6 months. First 2 months I was fine. Kartikeya in Vrindaban. Of course, fine meant I had no idea what was ahead as I'm drinking water from whatever, wherever, eating whatever I'm given. Anyway, that lasted 5 weeks. Then I had malaria. Then I had jaundice. Then I had dysentery. The idea of coming here to India was, for me, it was also disgusting. I was following in the parampara. I actually feel a little more peaceful now. Prabhupada, that's what he saw. All his disciples are getting sick. They're coming here from the Western world to bring back Vedic culture. The government would never help. To this day, trying to get a visa. I spent 3 months in the USA, the beginning of the year, to get a proper visa, X2 visa, missionary visa, student visa. Otherwise, we're just tourists in India. You come and you have to leave. Prabhupada was repulsed by that. And he would have his main men go to these people, give my men visas, give them the ability to stay there so that all of you could come to Krishna consciousness. He said, but at least I can come to Vrindaban and Mayapur and get association of Vaishnavas. That was his mentality. But then one of those days, when he was at New Dwarka, he said, Shri Shri Rukmini Dwarkadish said, you go back to India, develop India. They told him. He said, Rukmini Dwarkadish. Dwarkadish said, you go to India, you establish temples. Therefore he came here by superior order. Over and over again I read, the pure devotee, everything they do, perfect. Because everything they do, they're taking instructions from Krishna. They don't do anything without the sanction of the Supreme, without hearing directly. Not some, I think. No, he said Krishna talks to you. Once when Prabhupada came back to the USA, 10 years after he began, now of course he's famous guru from India. And the Hare Krishna movement's famous. There were a few thousand of us. They thought there were millions of us because we were every day out preaching, every day doing Harinam in the city centers, Harinam in the airports, distributing books in the airports. We were on television. We were in so many movies, just walking around through bullets being fired, all these different movies. And there's the Hare Krishnas, Vishnu John Swami passing through, murdanga banging. We were part of the culture. That quickly, in 5 years, everybody knew us. Everyone's watching television. Everyone's watching, going to the movies. And there are the Hare Krishnas in there. Because New Dwarka was Just like here, you have Bollywood. New Dwarka temple was 5 minutes away from all the major studios, Hollywood studios. So we actually had a connection with them. Everything, Krishna's arrangement to spread this Krishna conscious philosophy. So Prabhupada came back here on the order of Rukmini Dwarkadish. But Prabhupada liked India as much as he was disgusted by it. He understood. At that time, he would say, Indian people, they're 90% Krishna conscious. 10% crept in by the mercy of the British, They brought tobacco to you. They brought you tea. They brought you chili peppers. All you lovers of chili. No, there was no chili here. The Indians brought it to you. Get you all fired up. So I saw when Prabhupada, and he came here and he was staying at Mr. Mahadeva's place. He loved the atmosphere. He said, this Juhu, Prabhupada would say so many things, but he said, this place and Hawaii were his two favorite places in the world. You're so blessed. You live in a favorite place. Why? Dab. Coconut water. That was one of my services every day in these little flats that were here. Prabhupada was on the second floor flat. After lunch, Prabhupada took a short nap. 15 minutes, half hour maximum. And I knew what would happen, but he did it anyway. He would come in the flat, he would come from his bedroom. I would be in the hallway, living room area, just sitting there. And he would come out of his room, walking towards the bathroom. He didn't look at me, nothing. I would just hear, Dab, because he had a kind of a deep voice. When you wake up from any amount, your voice is deep, and he would say, Dab. And he would come back to his desk, and on his desk, Dab was there. And in the Dab, gold straw in his Dab, coconut water. And he'd sip his coconut water. In that flat, I said, in those days, 72, 73, you could smell the fish. From the ocean, just a block away, you could smell that fragrance. Call it I guess it's not a fragrance. Fragrant implies very nice. Prabhupada didn't mind. He had plans for all of you. And he had a vow he had made to Radharasa Bahari. He said, so sorry, you're here in this place, in this little village here, on this little concrete dais with a hot metal roof over your head. He said, but I'll build you a very grand temple. He said, please. In those days, the devotees didn't do Harinam in the streets here in India like they did in the United States. Harinam was not so much respected then. It was done by groups, different groups, and of course always collecting money. So he didn't see it as the method to spread Krishna consciousness to those people. 90% back then. One of his disciples, right here in Juhu, he was at the time. He went to Prabhupada. He said, Srila Prabhupada said, I'm studying Hindi. Prabhupada said, why? He says, well, I can learn Hindi and preach to the people here, to the local people. Prabhupada said, I've been preaching to them my whole life. I haven't made one devotee. What are you going to do? Prabhupada had to import malechas from the US just to teach you people Krishna consciousness. 1972, he said 90% Krishna conscious. My theory is every year you lost a percentage point. So 50 years later, you were like 40%. Still some idea of Vedic culture, but that 90% was very much reduced. You can thank all those satellite dishes, Sky Cable, bringing you all the Western garbage to fill your brain. You say, the British couldn't destroy Vedic culture because they couldn't reach the villages. So even in the cities, they did a good job of curtailing whatever culture was there. But to this day, you go to the villages, nothing has changed. You live in Vrindaban, just go 5 minutes away from what has become a city, and they're living their same life. They have a cow or two, they're growing their crops, they're worshiping their Ishtadev. Hasn't changed, but so much changed by the introduction of that television screen. What the British couldn't do in 100 years, cable TV did in 5 years. I remember being in Rishikesh, being here and there, nowhere with a little satellite dish on top. And the sadhu, he's watching MTV. Worse than what was in the USA. I've seen MTV in the USA. I've seen MTV here. Outrageous. This television business here. But at the same time, Prabhupada understood what was going on. We had to turn you into Westerners. We had to fully contaminate you. We had to offer you, they had to offer you so many ways, so-called enjoyment, so you could understand what suffering was. So you could understand there is no pleasure in this material world. We understood that in the USA. I understood it growing up as a teenager. Everyone working so hard, and there's no pleasure. At Mr. Mahadeva's house, Prabhupada called a meeting because the process here was making life members. Prabhupada initiated that process. He knew very well. We didn't know anything. The Indian mentality. He knew everything. And he started the process. Become a life member in this ISKCON society. We have guest houses all over the world you can stay in. Any Indian at that time, as it is now, if they have money, they like to travel all around the world, see everywhere. And this ISKCON membership was a ticket. I show my card, 3 days free. Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York. This is how we sold life member. They were very happy. What a deal. 1,111 rupees. You can stay anywhere for 3 days. Travel, stay in our temples. In Vrindaban, he said, make one room where they can have their tea. Just get them to come here. Prabhupada was so compassionate. When I was with him at Bhaktivedanta Manor, he was preaching to the Indians who had gone to England, London, everywhere. Actually, it was very wonderful what Prabhupada did, what happened in the world. You know, England did so much to destroy the culture here. The British did so much to destroy culture in India. Now you go to England, everywhere you go, it's Indians. They own all the shops. I used to, when I lived there, sometimes I would get lost going into the center of the city in London. It's a crazy place, London City. So I'd park the car, go in a shop to try to get directions. But they didn't speak English. They were Indians. They would be speaking. They would be speaking Hindi or something. This is in London City, the very heart of British culture. They didn't speak English. That was the revenge Krishna gave in England. He sent all the Indians to England to get even for what they had done. Prabhupada had a few of them before him. They're also life members. And they were saying, he was saying you can't drink tea. Prabhupada, we wake up in the morning. Now you don't even have to wake up. The timer is there. You know, they walk into the kitchen, it's already made. That's advancement of civilization. You don't even have to wait 1 minute for your tea. Prabhupada said to him, have nice nimbu pani. Prabhupada said nimbu pani, his favorite drink, he said, nimbu pani. He said, you can have nice nimbu pani, cold nimbu pani. He said also, he said, my wife, she was addicted to tea. He said, and whatever I did, I could not stop her from drinking tea. He said, finally I said to her, either the tea goes, I go. He said, here I am. He left. But he had this group of devotees in front of him. Now, I've been in India now for 3 months. It's December 1972. And he says, the life members are complaining already. This is just after 1 year of getting this program going. Because they were not only offered residence in any temple for 3 days, any guest house, they were offered Prabhupada's books. And as every book would come out, they would get that book. So they were also told they would get the complete library of Prabhupada's books as he was translating. But Prabhupada got a few letters, and they were complaining because we weren't meeting our contract. We would give out the memberships, books weren't coming, later books, little prasadam that was going to be there. These things weren't happening. And Prabhupada said, everything, you're spoiling our reputation. He said, you're making life members, but you're not fulfilling your obligation. He says, this is a disaster. He says, we have to leave India. And I'm sitting on the side thinking, we're going to leave India. Thank goodness. Because I was sick all the time. So when he said it, I actually thought he was going to pick up and leave India. He wasn't going to leave India. Prabhupada would say things for emphasis. He would let you know to what degree his dissatisfaction was. One morning in New Dwarka, world headquarters. So after being here, Prabhupada went back to New Dwarka. He stayed there for 2 months. When he arrived there, one time, this was later on, at that time I was Grahasta, Prabhupada was in his rooms in New Dwarka looking out the window. Outside his window there was a karate studio. All day long you'd hear, hut, 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 hut. They were teaching. He never said anything because you couldn't stop it. If there was a fan on over there and he heard it, he would tell you, turn the fan off. But he didn't mind the hut. All day, hut. One class after another, but it was there. There was nothing he could do. He accepted it. Once he flew to Vrindaban, 1975. He's walking around like we do, Parikram with Srila Prabhupada, every day in all our temples. So he was walking by, was the back in the corner, the donation office. No one was in there. Fans running. Prabhupada looked. He said, I have to travel 10,000 miles to tell you to turn off a fan. We miss so much. He yelled at Sruti Rupa. She cleaned the floor. You know, like they sweep the floor. Servants, they sweep. Then they mop and they turn the fans on. Prabhupada went into the room After she had mopped the floor, she turned the fan on. He went in, why is the fan on? Oh, so the floor will dry. He said, the floor is going to dry. Why are you wasting Krishna's energy? Every detail. Krishna consciousness is in the details. Attentiveness in your service. So he said to them, he's emphasizing, you've got to take care of these people. You're taking their money, their rupees, but you're not fulfilling your contract. Anyway, he drove that point home. In New Dwarka, the one time he's there looking out the window, he knew I loved Los Angeles. I don't know, each place you go, there's a certain kind of energy. And for me, Los Angeles definitely had a kind of an energy. Very enjoyable place. It was like spring all the time, maybe 1 month of a winter-like weather. Otherwise, it was always springtime. Well, Prabhupada would stay there, do his translating work. And when he arrived, he looked out the window. So, Srutakirti Maharaj. I was never Maharaj, but this sense of humor. How do you like it here in New Dwarka? He knew I loved New Dwarka. I could have lived there forever. But he couldn't. He had to travel. He said the same thing in Mayapur, looking over the renda. Srutakirti Maharaj, how do you like it here in Mayapur? I said, oh, Prabhupada, it's very, very nice. And it was wonderful, the atmosphere, like nowhere else. But every place has its atmosphere. I recognize, Prabhupada said, this is his office, place of business. This place means business, huh? The deities, they mean business here. They're class above everything. But I realized, looking at Radharasa Bahari today, they were taking care of me as well as I traveled around with Srila Prabhupada. I had no base. But there on that little altar, that little slab, they gave me some little bit of roots at that time. Juhu, there's a song in English, you were always on my mind. Love song. Juhu was always on Prabhupada's mind. Always. Because this place created so many problems. Rajhari, are they all solved yet? All the problems? Increasing. The more you expand, the more problems. You're never going to finish taking care of the problems here. They're expanding because Prabhupada took that headache so that all of you can sit here so comfortably in your air-conditioned rooms and everything. Gorgeous deities. Many of you know, I know this lady here, Krishnambra. I knew her mother. I lived in England for 8 years. Vishva. If you don't know Vishva, you should all know Vishva. These outfits, these magnificent outfits, like nowhere else in the world. Krishna Balaram, Radha Shama Sundar, Gaur Nitai and Vrindaban. Gorgeous outfits. Different. Here, whew, just amazing. Radharasa Bahari. Prabhupada empowered everyone, take care nicely of these deities. When that little hut was there, I wasn't here with Prabhupada when, well, Prabhupada also was not here for the opening, but he stayed in his rooms here. Then it was Hari Sari. I was here in the early days with nothing, work. Everybody working so hard. One day we came here. Prabhupada went up to his room. He would arrive here sometimes 10 in the morning. So we'd just arrive. Prabhupada had a method. Prabhupada had a relationship with the deities all over the world. He installed these deities everywhere. When he would come before the deities, offer his dandavats, Krishna talked to Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, Krishna will talk to you. You have to become qualified. You talk to Krishna, not just that you talk to Krishna, Krishna will talk to you. So in different temples, Prabhupada would greet the deities. Krishna was talking to him. I didn't hear, none of us would hear. But we came here to one time to Juhu. And Prabhupada knew I had no time to prepare anything because I'm cooking his lunch and giving him massage at the same time. That's a mystical process we can explain. His cooker in the other room, the other building. And I'm massaging him for an hour and a half and this thing's cooking away. Very low flame so you don't spoil everything. Huh? So the whole time I'm massaging him, I'm meditating on the cooker as I'm massaging him. So Prabhupada's traveling all over the world. He's meditating on this place. And this man trying to cheat him. Everywhere. Prabhupada would say, I have such a headache. How can I translate? He's getting letters, telegrams. Everything's disintegrating here in Juhu. But Radha Rasa Bahari are standing there. They have magic. It's going to take some time. In Vrindaban sometimes I think, Krishna Balaram, you've been here now, 47 years. I was here for the installation in Vrindaban when the deities were installed. So I was there for the anniversary. I was there for a 40th anniversary, the 45th anniversary. I was there on the altar behind Srila Prabhupada when he was offering artik to Krishna Balaram. 50 years later, I figured out Vrindavan's my home. Took me 50 years to understand I have a home. Prabhupada's home. I'm his servant. It's my home. Now I'm understanding this is also my office here. I'm very, very happy to come here. Such excellent management over the years. Because I see Prabhu here. One thing, he came here to India. He would spend his days, anyone could come in the room, any of his disciples. Outside of India, big sign, no trespassing, no entry. Guards at the doors outside Prabhupada's room. No one could go in to see Srila Prabhupada. He's translating. He's answering letters. He's busy. He has to do his translating work. When he came to India, and I'm trying to keep people, no, Prabhupada, let them in, let them in. The only thing his disciples had, the only pleasure they had in India, these Western devotees, was Prabhupada's presence. And he gave it to them as much as they wanted, just to inspire them. And he would talk. He didn't always talk philosophy. He just talked with them. He would tell stories just to develop more and more their love for him so that they could tolerate this disgusting place, India. They did nothing for us here. Everything was a struggle. No help from anyone. Especially Prabhupada was very upset with the government. He said, I'm bringing all these people here just to show your culture. To this day, we're struggling. Huh? Gopal Krishna Maharaj, the agents, still dealing big men. Me, why don't they give me retirement visa, spend the rest of my life here without having to think of anything else? We've given our lives to Srila Prabhupada. Anyway, maybe someday that will happen. But before the massage, he said to me, I'll take Raj Bhog for lunch today. For me, that was, Imagine, I'm looking forward to not cooking. I was such a rascal, but it was difficult. Cooking, massaging, everything was at the same time. It was a balancing act. And by Krishna's mercy, by Srimati Radharani's mercy, he never complained about his lunch once in 900 meals that I cooked his lunch. Never once complained. And if you saw what I cooked for him, rice, chapatis, dal, little bit of spice, little bit of ghee to make the chaunts. He trained me that way for 3 days when I first became his servant. Not big chilies. You can't breathe in the kitchen. No, that's not what he showed me. This mode of passion, eating, mode of goodness. If I wanted to, I could lecture you all for days about the cooking that goes on in our society. I'll save it for another time. I did it in GEV with some of the cooks. Anyway, Raj Bhog. So I finished the massage, and I have to bathe and dress. Prabhupada takes bath, dresses. I would lay out his clothing on the bed, dhoti. No kurta here, too hot for kurtas. Kopin, and Prabhupada would dress. Then he'd go in his room, put on his tilak. You see the photograph, Prabhupada putting on tilak. Just watching Prabhupada put on tilak, you can become Krishna conscious. You see attention. Everything he did with such care. Opening up his white bag, just watching him move the zipper. Nothing. Everything just carefully. Didn't see any, no passion. Just meditation. Putting on his teeth, opening up his mirror. I would, on his desk, I would open up that mirror. That's in Vrindaban now. It has carved ivory. That was by Gargamuni, silver, compact mirror on one side, picture of his Guru Maharaj on the other side. A little silver paturi with a ball in it. It's chandan for tilak. It was like the size of a golf ball. And he kept it round. It was always round as it got smaller, perfectly round. Then he put up his arms. You could just watch him. And you go into ecstasy. Then Gayatri. Very straight. Srila Prabhupada would sit, say his Gayatri mantra. And then as soon as that's done, you better be bringing in that plate of prasadam, whether it's the Raj Bhog plate or it's what you prepared. Because that means time to eat. And he said, as soon as that time is there, he said, the stomach's ready. The stomach's ready. It actually starts, the juices begin as soon as that time is there. He said, if you don't bring it, he said, whole digestion is spoiled. You want to be servant to Srila Prabhupada? You got to get your act together. You can't be, what do they call? Anyway, nowadays we say snowflakes. You can't be spaced out. You have to have attention every moment. That's Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada would be finishing Gayatri every day. I'd be bringing in his plate. Today, Prabhupada finished Gayatri. What am I doing? I'm in some little kitchenette somewhere, heating up the Mahaprasadam from the Raj Bhog offering. Because I don't want Prabhupada to eat cold. That was one of the other things. Has to be right off of the stove, hot. Every chapati, one at a time. I didn't put 3-4 chapatis on his plate. I put one chapati. I would come into the room, run into the room, put the plate down, offer obeisances, run out of the room, make another chapati, watch it puff up, little ghee on the top, but you don't flatten it. when you put you very delicately. This chapati is also person. It's like a living thing. Everything is person. That's Krishna consciousness, huh? So you bring it in on the plate, slide it on the Prabhupada's plate, still puffed up. You'd offer obeisances. Sometimes you'd see it, sometimes you'd hear. Push it down, Prabhupada. Push it down, break off a piece. And you run back out of the room. You make another chapati, run back into the room, put it on his plate, offer obeisances, run back out of the room, make another chapati. You just keep doing that. Then he'd say, dal. You run back, get some dal, put it, offer obeisances. In 15 minutes, you would offer obeisances 12 times. He never said, okay, you reached your quota. No. 100 times a day I could offer obeisances. You never reach your quota. If it wasn't for having to do service, you should just lie there in front of Prabhupada, never even get up, just lie there, prayers. But he didn't like that either. His new secretary, here, right here in the flats, I'm pointing there, I don't know where the flats were, but somewhere here on this property. That way, that way, the flats. His new secretary, Paramahamsa, you would join Prabhupada, you'd be in ecstasy. Then after a while, you'd understand, ecstasy doesn't come cheaply. You got to work for ecstasy. Don't think you're a devotee, everything, well, why am I not in ecstasy? Do something. If you want ecstasy, work for it. Tapa. Then you'll feel something. Paramahamsa, he would lie down there. Prabhupada ring the bell. Call Paramahamsa, his new secretary. He'd lie there. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna. And then, Om Agyanata Timidandasya. 3 times. I always say everything 3. I can tell you dozens of 3 times. 3 times, boom, that's it. Nothing happens after the 3rd time. Either shoot you or become advanced. Whatever it is, on the 3rd time it's going to happen. Call Paramahamsa. Paramahamsa, Mam Vishnu, he's chanting these mantras. So then the next day, call Paramahamsa, he comes in, lies down on the floor. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pistaya. Om Agyan. Get up! He said, how are you going to get anything done lying on the floor? Prabhupada was so wonderful. Even when he was yelling at you, he could make you laugh. You think of what nonsense I'm doing, So the devotee comes into the kitchen. Prabhupada wants this prasadam. Yes, I'm getting it ready just now, so I'm still playing with all these bowls, and there's little katoris, different sabjis, dal, little spot of rice. And it's an hour it's been sitting on the altar, whatever, here and there. So then he comes back again. Now, Prabhupada said. That was it. Brought it in, put it. Prabhupada looked at me. You don't eat Mahaprasadam. Even Prabhupada, you just honor it. That's it. Finished. But Prabhupada's honoring that day had a purpose. That's why he would ask for Raj Bhog. I've seen it happen in 3 or 4 different temples. If he asks for Raj Bhog, it's because Krishna is hungry. Because you're cooking garbage. So Prabhupada immediately tastes the dal. I always say, this dal tastes like mud. Then he would grab the puri, whatever, which was like cracker puri. Also has to be perfect. Everything, Krishna consciousness, we have to make perfection in Krishna consciousness. So he would reject the puri. Look at this puri. Useless. The spicing everything is bad. Radharasa Bahari, they're not eating nicely. Because, just like now, you have these big, big vats. You can make a huge vat of rice, 200 liters of rice. What do? You grab 1 piece of rice, you squeeze it. If it's done, everything's finished, a whole pot of rice. Prabhupada understood that. If you're not taking proper care of Radha Rasa Bahari, if there's a little inattention, if they're not eating nicely, if things aren't cleaned properly, and it doesn't just mean the altar. An altar you clean 20 times a day, you'll see the pujaris scrubbing everything so clean. And then they walk out the door, go back to their room. No, everything here is paraphernalia, Balarama, paraphernalia of the deities. Non-different. Pujari room, everything belongs to the deities. So when Prabhupada said, if you're not even feeding them nicely, what else is going on in this temple? So that was his barometer to taste the offering to their lordships. And because the lordships are saying things have got to get better here. And again, he did it in several places. New Dwarka, the world headquarters at that time, they would bring, Prabhupada would have them fly people from all over the country to take instruction from the head pujari, Shalavati. She was she's in New Vrindaban now. I think she's 94 years old or something, Shalavati. Malati got her to come back to New Vrindaban. She was the first head pujari of ISKCON, the world headquarters. And she's training up men, women, whoever it was, learning how Prabhupada instructed her to worship the deity. What time do we go to, Prabhu? Okay. So she was carrying the standard, 1973. So there in New Dwarka, we would always, everyone, I would leave Prabhupada's room, they would say, what did Prabhupada say? What's Prabhupada doing? Our whole life was Prabhupada. Even Krishna's on the altar. That's okay, but we don't know Krishna. We're reading about him. We're hearing Prabhupada's telling us everything. We're getting an understanding of the Supreme Personality, but what do we know about Krishna? But Prabhupada was right in front of us, his representative. So they always, as soon as I was out of Prabhupada's room, there's people on the other side of the door. What did he say? What's he doing? I heard him speak. What did he say to you? So as Shalavati saw how I was serving Prabhupada at lunch, bring him his lunch, make a chapati, bring it to him, go back and forth, back and forth. So one day she comes up to me and says, Srutakirti, she said, Rukmini Dwarkadish, Gaurnatai and Jagannath, Lord Jagannath, Subhadra, Baladev, on the altar on the right. She said, so I've started, the kitchen was right next to the altar, nice beautiful deity kitchen then, 1973. So of course, their lordships, Prabhupada said, two kinds of prasadam, opulent and sumptuous. Prabhupada's mastery of the English language. Opulent, he said, means ghee and sugar. And that's for the deities. Fry everything in ghee. Milk products, everything rich, rich, rich. And sumptuous means very, very tasty. And he said the devotees should eat very sumptuously. So much so that they don't think of going outside the temple to take anything. He said that's how tasty prasadam should be. So Shalavati says, Srutakirti, she said, how you serve Prabhupada? She said, I'm serving lunch to the deities that way. I said, what do you mean? She says, well, I put one puri on each plate. Then I run back into the kitchen and make a hot puri. And I bring them all another puri. Then I go back and bring them. And I'm thinking, yeah, this doesn't sound right. So me, I had such a wonderful thing. If I had a question, Prabhupada, no one could just like that get a question answered. People would send me letters. Kirtanananda would send me letters. He made me Prabhupada's servant. So he had a direct line, like phone line, to Prabhupada. That time, direct meant letters. That was as direct as it got, was sending a letter. He would ask me, ask Prabhupada this, ask Prabhupada that. He gave me a picture, Radha Vrindaban Chandra. He said, wherever you go in the world, you put this picture, Radha Vrindaban Chandra, on Prabhupada's desk. So he always remembers to come to New Vrindaban. This was the politics that was going on in ISKCON. Transcendental politics. Everyone wanted Prabhupada. So I went to Prabhupada and I told him, I said, Shilavati started serving the deities, puris, one at a time. Prabhupada, no. He said, you can't go in while they're eating, they're offering. He said, once you put the offering on the altar, you close the door. He said, they get to eat 15, 20 minutes. No, he said, you can't go back in while they're taking. I said, yes, Prabhupada. I knew that. In common sense, we don't know anything except for what Prabhupada told us. That's all we know. That's disciple. You don't know anything. Lord Chaitanya, Supreme Personality of Godhead, I'm a fool before my spiritual master. Such a safe, wonderful position. I always knew I was a fool in front of Prabhupada, and I never asked questions. That was a safe question. Another time, New Dwarka. We're Americans. It was good in some ways, but Prabhupada also said we had changed disease. We had a very bad disease, infection, always making improvements. Change disease. Prabhupada set a standard, but now they're making these sweets. We had beautiful sweets. Prabhupada showed us how to make everything. But now they're making these sweets for every offering for the deities. Raisins, little cut-up dates, some nuts, peanut butter, bind it all together. But, I mean, if you're going to make burfi, it's going to take you hours. But you could roll these things together with a little food processor. 15 minutes, all set for the day. And I'm thinking, not nice. Because I was getting from the deity plate sometimes some mahaprasadam and these sweets. They even puffed rice they would put in them. But this puffed rice was from major manufacturer. It was box cereal, puffed rice. Anyway, on Prabhupada's plate, always sandesh. If there wasn't rasgulla, gulab jamun available, or burfi, sandesh. That was the go-to sweet for Prabhupada. Every meal, 3 times a day, sandesh. A sweet, a milk sweet was on Prabhupada's plate. So I put 2 sandesh and 2 of these, I don't know what you would call them. They were like fast food laddu, it was like not really laddu, but fast food style laddu. And I knew a little bit about Prabhupada being with him. So lunch goes on, back and forth with chapatis, and then the end of the meal, you have your sweet. So Prabhupada has a sandesh, and he's obviously looking at these other things sitting on the plate. So I come in to clear. He says, what is this? I said, oh, Prabhupada. I said, this is a daily sweet they're making in the temple. He said, what is this nonsense? He said, I've given you the sweets. Wonderful Bengali sweets, sandesh, rasgulla, rasmalai, burfi, all these things are there. He said, why are they doing this nonsense? He said, you're Westerners always changing everything. He said, it'll destroy the movement, your changes. I came here by train from Mathura. You sit there by the window, whatever compartment you're in, next to you there's tracks. And you're looking at the tracks. Never changes, do they, those tracks? Same, parallel lines. Speak parallel lines, Guru Krishna, You move 1 millimeter over. Go down 10 miles. You're not going to have a train anymore. It's been derailed. Tracks are useless. This is the importance of not changing the instructions from the spiritual master. Prabhupada attributes his entire success, and I've seen it, because every word his guru said was sacred. He followed it unflinchingly, did not deviate 1 millimeter, not 1/10,000th part, the tip of a hair did he deviate. Anything my spiritual master wrote, he said, you can read that. He didn't say anything my godbrothers wrote you can read. No, anything my spiritual master, that was okay to read. We had orders. Prabhupada's books, bas, nothing else. But he said you can read any my Guru Maharaj's books, any of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's books. They're parampara. Anything else? No. You'll just become confused. Worse than confused. Very, very careful. Don't change. Krishna Balaram Mandir, after the opening, the next year, calls for his secretary. He's not there. Where is he? Oh, he's visiting Madan Mohan temple or something, visiting. Prabhupada waited till he got back. Where were you? Oh, Prabhupada was taking Darshan, Madan Mohan, Radha Damodar. You should be here. He said, I put all the holy places of Vrindaban in the courtyard of Krishna Balaram Mandir. Prabhupada wanted us to be so faithful to him. We don't think of anything outside of what he's given us. In New Dwarka, told you I loved New Dwarka. Prabhupada stayed there 2 months. He was there so long, I actually developed a little bit of friendly relationship with some of my godbrothers there. And their wives, they would make preparations. What does Prabhupada need? One's doing the laundry, one's doing this, that. And they're saying, come to Mangalarti. Packed the temple room. Prabhupada's there. Devotees, hundreds of devotees are in the temple room. Half this size. Packed. Parikshit leading kirtan, Bhardaraj leading kirtan, Gauravani's father, the original kirtan person, Gauravani's father, beautiful kirtans. Why don't you come to Mangalarti? I said, Prabhupada's servant. If he rings the bell, I got to be there. Does he ever ring the bell 4:30 in the morning? I said, no, but still I have to be there. Just come. So the next morning I go to Mangalarti, and it was wonderful. Otherwise I'm just sitting in my room trying to chant and hear. My mind's all over the place. 21-year-old person sitting in one room 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for months. Sitting in a room. No laptops, no cell phone, nothing. Your japa beads, Prabhupada's books. So I went to Mangalarti. 10 minutes go by. Behind me, Prajumna. Prabhupada wants to see you, and he's really mad. That was our mantra, Prabhupada's entourage. It was our favorite. We like that mantra more than the Maha Mantra. Prabhupada wants to see you, and he's really mad. We liked it because he's going to yell at you, not me. It was like this. You're just happy he's not yelling at you. It's your turn. Prabhupada wants to see you, he's really mad. We didn't say angry, mad. I know what's ahead. I've been here for a year now. I know what's coming. You put your armor on. There's no armor you can put on to defend yourself. So I run into the room. I'm offering obeisances. Prabhupada didn't wait till you're looking at him. No. It's all right. He's already yelling. Where were you? I've been ringing this bell for hours. Sometime he could say for years he's ringing the bell. I'm ringing the bell for hours. It's 10 minutes, it was gone. I said, Prabhupada, I'm sorry. I said, Prabhupada, I went to Mangal Arati. You have no business going to Mangal Arati. He said, your business is to be in that room 24 hours a day. What if I need something? Yes, Prabhupada. I said, never go to Mangal Arati again. I followed that vow for many, many years. I never went to Mangal Arati. I was only a servant for 2 years, but I continued following that instruction. I was the only person in ISKCON. I was in Maya because I went to Mangal Arati that day. Everyone here, you're not at Mangal Arati, you're in Maya. Prabhupada said, if you don't go to Mangal Arati, you're in Maya. And you should have to fast for breakfast. Starve, Prabhupada said. You should starve if you don't go to the morning program. That's how he emphasized it. He didn't want you to starve, and he would let you eat. Prajumna wasn't at breakfast one day, Mayapur. So Prabhupada would come out on the veranda, walk back and forth, and he would look. Prabhupada saw everything. He knew how many handfuls you were putting in your mouth somehow or other. He knew how many chapatis you were eating. He told me one time, you ate 4 puris. Prajumna ate 10 puris. That's why he's sick. Cooked in oil. What was I saying? So this is the position. Whatever Prabhupada wants, that's what you do. Anyway, now I go to the morning program. Most important thing in the day. Prabhupada called it the routine. Routine doesn't mean it's not a big deal. It's the most important thing we do in the temple is this morning program. Given by Srila Prabhupada, followed by Srila Prabhupada, morning class every day. He was giving it, but nonetheless, I used to love watching Prabhupada as they would chant the verse and the devotee, and Prabhupada would chant along with all of us. He was one of us. He was one of the devotees. He enjoyed his association with his disciples. He relished it. He loved to see us jumping up and down in front of him. And he'd go, to make you jump even more, you watch his head, and that meant dance, dance, dance. Us as dancing white elephants. He brought us here to bring all you back to Krishna consciousness. So I think I need to stop here, 9:30. I'll be here tomorrow morning, and we'll definitely talk tomorrow morning about how this temple was secured and anything else you want to hear about at that time. If you have any questions or anything, I have some program this evening here, but I won't be here. Sunday we take 5 o'clock train back to Mathura. But very much I would love to come here. Love to come here more often. Just like now I love to be in Vrindaban. 50 years ago, Paramahamsa and I, we would watch the planes flying from the airport going back to the west, and we'd think, when will I be on that plane? Now I don't want any more planes back to the west. There's enough people going there now. Radhanath Maharaj is over there preaching. Some preachers are starting again because we've fallen so far behind in the West. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.